Thanks, Mike. So, following the gizmo talk, the human eye is a terrific gizmo. And it's the prototype for all the cameras that we use for photography. Curved lens, and then somewhere behind that lens, inside the eye, a retina, 2D sensor. And all the photographs that we see in the world today, they all look the way they do because we invented cameras and built cameras to make these 2D images the way that the world looks to us. Now, an insect eye is, of course, optically totally different. So these aren't, two big eyes for this fly. They're compound eyes, of course, composed of a multitude of tiny eyes, tiny lenses, all mushed together. And, of course, if we saw pictures the way that an insect eye made pictures, then they wouldn't look like the world does to us. But in many ways, insect eyes collect sort of richer data. Each of these little lenses captures the light coming to it sort of in all the direction of rays that come to it, and it preserves it over this multitude of little lenses. And there are many, many different kinds of lenses in the animal kingdom, from lobsters to scallops to vertebrates to invertebrates, as we're seeing here. And there's one type of eye, though, one type of camera that, as far as we know so far, doesn't exist in the animal kingdom. And it's composed, actually, of taking the mammalian eye, our eyes, and if you can imagine taking the eye and keeping that lens, keeping that curved interface, but then replacing the retina with an insect eye. So our eye with our retina replaced with one of these. This is basically the optical recipe for a light field camera. This is the kind of camera that I worked on for my graduate research and is the kind of camera that we develop at my company, Lytro. And I think it's very interesting that this hasn't been discovered in nature to this point, because what I found in my research and in my entrepreneurial work is that this kind of camera, this kind of eye, captures a fundamentally richer kind of data about the lighting, about the photographs that we collect, that when you process it, you can turn pictures into things that they couldn't be before. You can make them immersive, make them three-dimensional, you can make them interactive. And one of the things that light field cameras and light field photography has been most known for, sort of the signature capability, if you will, is that it takes photographs that you can focus after you take the shot, amongst other things like making them 3D and stereo, which is something that I showed when I previewed the first camera here 2 years ago. Another thing that it does is when you collect this really rich data is that it opens a pathway to the future of cameras and photography to enable cameras that are much more powerful or can be more cost-effective and simpler to make than we could ever have in the past. So light field cameras give a lot of very fundamental benefits, from new capabilities to a better price performance pathway to the future. So how do you make a camera that has a mammalian eye where the retina is replaced with an insect eye? Well, you can start with something like this, as you can see here. It looks like a frosted piece of glass held between my fingertips here. But if you hold it up to your eye, if you bring it up to your eye and look at it, and look at a bright light, you can see it's spreading the rays of light out, this little piece of glass. It's called a microlens array. It's literally like an insect eye. It's a multitude of tiny lenses really, really close together. They're so small that they're microscopic. And if you put this in front of a retina, in front of a CMOS sensor, as you see here, this is a conventional CMOS sensor of the type that you'd find in a dedicated camera or in your mobile phone. Then you turn this sensor into an insect eye, or something we call a light field sensor that records full light fields, not just 2D pictures with every shot. And you can put this light field sensor inside the body of a camera behind that curved lens, and then you have a light field camera that is like a human eye, except with the retina replaced with an insect eye. This is the second generation light field camera that Lytro recently announced. The first one that I showed was very distinctive. It was really representative of something different, transformational in photography and extending into the future for cameras. This one looks much more like a conventional camera because, as I've described, all the changes really that are fundamental at the physical level are microscopic. They're right in front of the sensor surface, and you need a microscope to see them. But this camera does something interesting where it represents something where we've redesigned the lens. It's a custom lens from scratch that uses this rich information that we're collecting in order to change the design to enable something that is quite unusual. This is a really beautiful lens, a 30 to a 250 millimeter zoom that's very nice from wide to telephoto, that has a very powerful aperture, an f2 aperture across the whole range from wide to telephoto, which is pretty unusual. And you couldn't use this lens, you couldn't design this kind of lens for use with a conventional camera. You need this rich information collected from this light field sensor. The sensor itself sits at the heart of the camera. It's much higher resolution than in our first product because the company has matured in our technology and in the team developing this. So this is a sensor that is 4 times the resolution of the first product. It has a 40 megapixel CMOS sensor inside it, capturing 40 million rays of light flowing inside the camera. So this is, in some sense, the highest resolution dedicated camera sensor on the market. And this makes very little sense for a 2D camera, but it makes great sense for light field photography because we're collecting it in this higher dimensional rich space. And it's a computational camera. Fundamentally, you need computation in order to take this rich data and then turn it into the photographs that look the way that our eyes make pictures and that will make sense to us as human beings. So this has a tremendous processing system inside, has the kind of processor that goes in a modern tablet. That's a lot of processing power to put into a camera. And it powers, modern things that we expect on cameras these days, like a beautiful touchscreen. I have one right here. They're not shipping yet, but this is an early engineering build. And yeah. So we call this the Lytro Illume. Now, of course, it's all about the pictures that you can get out of these. And as I said, one of the things that you get from light field cameras is the ability to make pictures that become interactive or immersive, three-dimensional. And so we've worked with some professional photographers, Anna Weber, Brian Nevins, Kyle Thompson, Laurie Nix, and a husband and wife team, a professional named Roman Leo, during what we're still in the sort of finishing design phases and engineering phases for the product in order to experiment with the kind of pictures you can make. So what I want to do is I want to show you a really short video to close. And what you're going to see is little short segments showing these photographers using the camera and their early experiences with the camera, interspersed with some of the first pictures coming off the Lytro Illume. These are single shots, and you'll recognize them, I think, as single shots, but they're kind of interesting because they'll be applied in a kind of animation way to try to make the pictures have a sense of motion, a sense of movement, a three-dimensionality, a sense of change in focus to try to tell the story the way that some of these photographers wanted to. So some early experiments with the Lytro Illume. Thank you very much.
Photography is my life. It's how I document the experiences I get to have and the experiences I get to share with other people.
I put a lot of emotion into my art and the photography.
It's a way I can show my thoughts and emotions and kind of create something that's meaningful to me.
It fulfills almost every aspect of my life.
What does photography mean to us?
It's not something that you do from 9 to 5. It's something you live with every single day of your life.
My own work challenges me with every new scene that I do, and to be presented this camera, a whole new set of challenges, and that's what I really enjoy.
It was very interesting to see how could we apply this technology to what we do.
It's not made to show up in a magazine. It's not made to see in 2D. It's made for an interactive experience. And it's as if the camera has enabled the viewer to change the story on their own
You can see different elements that were hidden before and discover your way through the photograph.
I do like to put a lot of details in the scenes, and this camera is going to allow me to focus the foreground, the middle ground, and the background.
I think for us it's important that people get emotional connection to the image.
With the Litro camera, photography really becomes alive.
It's exciting to know you have the possibility of trying something new and just furthering what you're capable of using your eye for.